Hey. All right.
Who is it?
Next speaker is Ellen Jaffe Jones.
All right, and Ellen's going to tell us today about beating inflation and more on a vegan diet. Ellen Jaffe Jones is a former two-time Emmy-winning TV investigative reporter from Miami and St. Louis. She's the author of not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, but 6 popular vegan health and fitness cookbooks and books, including Eat Vegan on $4 a Day, Vegan Fitness for Mortals, Vegan Sex, Vegan for One, and a few more. When COVID shut down her book tour, Ellen used her experience in real estate to become a Florida realtor with her vegan longtime real estate broker boyfriend, and she's been a runner for over 40 years. And she's going to tell you about all of the over 200 5K or longer races that she has placed in, and she's amazing. So she's going to tell you all about it. And I'll brag for her, but you're going to be impressed.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, Vegan Evan and company, for such a great introduction. Thank you all for being here at the Sarasota VegFest. As has been said, I have traveled all over the world talking about the topics of my 6 books, and it is so cool to be able to only get in the car and drive 5 minutes to get to a VegFest. So I love being the hometown girl, and I've just had a lot of fun doing this. Mike said to test the clicker to make sure it works, and I have to be in line of sight. I have to be here, okay. And we're not gonna get feedback. There we go, okay, all right, cool. So this is the sweet spot. Yes, flying around the world, talking about these topics, and hello, there we go. All right, so what is a vegan and why? Some of you might be newbies to the table. Nothing with a mama or a face. Some people come to the table like I did for health reasons or environmental, because but what about fish? Aren't they healthy? Well, all species of fish now are absorbing microplastics. Not cool if you don't want to eat plastic. And financial reasons, we're going to get into that. And of course, animal rights and compassion, because if you love animals, why would you eat one species and not another? All right, my background journey started in 1980-ish when my story is my mom, aunt, and both sisters had breast cancer. We were part of the BRCA1 and BRCA2 gene studies. I'm the only adult female in my family without it. So back in those days, I actually almost died of a colon blockage. I had to be carted to the emergency room, and the doctor said they'd never seen a blockage in somebody so young at the age of 28, and I would need to be on medicine the rest of my life. So I ran to the health food store, read all 5 books on fiber, because that's all there was at the time, and the progression was macrobiotic, and then vegetarian, and then vegan. So you can see, even in these early television pictures from St. Louis, the newspaper doing a story on my TV background, you can see the beans and the grains on my kitchen counter. Still looks the same to this day. And I jokingly said to the reporter, you know, my dream in life is to open up a fast food, health food chain and call it Tofu Tico. My only regret is I didn't think of something like Whole Foods or Chipotle's, but those kinds of things were just dreams at the time. After I left television, after 18 years, you know, they said 40 was never too young to have a facelift, and the more often I had them at a younger age, the more effective they would be. I thought, you know, I don't really want to do that. My sister, who had reconstruction on her breast after her second go-round of breast cancer, her best friend was her plastic surgeon, and he dropped the scalpel within a millimeter of her carotid artery. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to use running and diet as my facelift. But when I went to work at Smith Barney for 5 years as a financial consultant, I was stuck behind a computer and a desk, and I put on quite a bit of weight, at least for a 5'3" frame. So I was up to close to 150. So we moved to Florida, and the doctors then found that I had hemorrhaging fibroid tumors, and they wanted to do a hysterectomy. But that was, again, at the emergency room. They called my OB, who turns out to be a closet vegan, and she goes, Ellen, just go back to that vegan diet and call me in the morning. And because I'd been at Smith Barney, I didn't have a lot of control over what I ate because I was working a lot of hours. We had working lunches with pizza. I got to choose the topping on my pizza, whoop-de-doo. And so that's one of the reasons that my weight blossomed at the time. So moved to Florida, went on Mary's Mini. If you're looking for a great weight loss diet, I still recommend that one. Use sweet potatoes as my main healthy complex carb, and the weight just fell off. And so that's where we are now. Okay, and there is the actual chronological timeline, and you can see when I was vegan before I went to Smith Barney, my cholesterol was at really super healthy levels, 135. And then I was desperate. You're going to see, yeah, Atkins, what's that doing up there? I thought the science had changed when Atkins enjoyed a second comeback. But really the only thing I would later learn is that the marketing had changed. I was really desperate to lose weight during that time. But as you can see, then I started getting coronary calcifications. And to this day, I'm now diagnosed with atherosclerosis because I have a very high cardiac calcium score. It's supposed to be between 0 and 400. Mine's 1400. But the determination is that it's old calcium. It's just kind of hanging out there. And I still continue to do all this running. As of yesterday, as I think it was mentioned, I'm a nationally ranked sprinter, and sprinting the short distances is my thing. I was the only female in this 70 to 74-year-old age group at the recent National Senior Games to compete in all 7 track events, and I placed in 3 of them. Yesterday at the Haven 5K race up the street, I was second in my age group, and that became the 263rd time I've placed in my age group since 2006, just on plants. And the reason it became this mission is because somebody came up to me at a race. I was wearing this very same shirt in 2011, the year it came out. And they said, "You can't run on a vegan diet. You're so weak. Where do you get your protein?" You know, all the questions that we get. And so, because I guess I'm a third rebellious youngest daughter, I said, "Watch me," internally. I mean, we had a lovely discussion at that moment. But that really inspired and ignited in me this passion to just keep racing. And here we are. My biggest success really came in teaching. You're going to hear Dr. Neil Barnard right after me. He is the president of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and I was so lucky to teach their cooking classes in person back in the mid-2000s. And Corky Carlson here was diagnosed in my class with multiple myeloma, one of the more fatal forms of bone cancer, had given her up for dead. And 8 months later, she comes back after taking my class and she says, "Ellen, I've lost 120 pounds. They've fired me from Moffitt. I don't have to go back up there anymore. I can just keep getting blood work done in Sarasota." And never counted a calorie, just eating recipes out of the book. So, you know, I know this can be as complicated as you want, but if you connect in with the right resources, because of this, I am a certified personal trainer and a certified running coach now because I just really enjoy teaching these classes. The Anna Maria Island Sun, where I did the classes, did an article on her. And I have since gotten recertified with them, so now there's so much being done online, and I'm teaching the classes online as well. But people come up to me all the time with their driver's licenses. This woman lost 130 pounds. And beans, the reason this happens is because beans are so rich in fiber and lots of protein, low in calories, and of course no cholesterol. Hamburger and dairy, no fiber and plenty of chemicals, toxins, and it lodges in the fat, no matter if it's lean fat or high fat. And there's the iconic shirt that I wear at races, and I'm just going to go through this briefly because I want to be respectful of my time. Started competing at the state level for the National Senior Games in 2012. And then in 2013, this was at Nationals, this woman who got first place in that picture comes up to me and she goes, "Ellen Jaffe Jones, cookbook author, right?" And I go like, "Yeah, who are you and why do you know this?" And she goes, "I study all my competition." And I'm going like, I'm just a weekend warrior athlete. I don't really do this I don't train a lot. I just kind of show up. And yet the National Senior Games does all these kinds of evaluations on what's called healthy, active, aging athletes. And so back when I was 62, 8 years ago, this is what they came up with, the different ways that they evaluate fitness, that I actually have the fitness of a 26-year-old. I have since had my heart tested because of the heart condition. And even though Sarasota Memorial, by the way, requires if you are diagnosed with heart disease, that you have to go through the Dean Ornish program for reversing heart disease, and I have done that. It is a vegan program. Basically, they want you to go all vegan, and when you do, even my numbers, which were healthy, became even healthier than what you saw displayed there. So it's pretty amazing that the mainstream is finally catching on, even though I write in my book, Eat Vegan on $4 a day, there's no money in broccoli, and when you understand that, you have to be your own investigative reporter to figure out the truth about food. You still can do it fairly easily. I'm not without my issues. I had bronchitis and chronic bronchitis and asthma as a child, and still competing here in Florida on cold days. You can find people who have to get like a moisturizer in their throat to deal with the sudden dry humidity. Nationals in 2017 and 2019. And then 2022. You'll see I'm wearing an orange shirt there called Get Set Up. That is the largest free online platform of classes for the over 55 crowd. They called up after hearing me on podcasts and said, we'd like to sponsor you at the Senior Games. We'll pay your way, your registration, your travel, a week in Fort Lauderdale. And they did, in fact, do that. So lots of protein. All right, I'm going to show you some pictures. That's my marathon body. I've done 2 full marathons, 13 half marathons. I've been told somebody with my sprint time shouldn't have even been able to complete a marathon. And then as you train for shorter distances, again, marathon body, your body just changes, and sometimes you get more bulky muscles. I started keeping track 2014. That's what the wall looked like. 2015, 116 times I placed in my age group, and usually that's the top 3 in the 5-year age group. But now that I jumped to 70, I'm actually in the 70 to 79-year-old 10-year age group, and then you get this veteran grandmasters thing that I've gotten already twice. So there we are, 257. That's what the wall looks like now. I haven't updated the slide to show that it's at 263. So yes, you can do it. I really don't think I'm that great of an athlete. I just show up, and that's what I encourage my clients to do. I've done the Skyway. It's going to be 4 times now, the 10K, even though I'm terrified of heights. You just have to overcome sometimes your biggest fears, your biggest obstacles. And of course, you get plenty of protein on a vegan diet. Does it look like I have a protein deficiency? Do you know anybody who's been diagnosed with a protein deficiency? Have you been to the protein deficiency ward of the hospital? No. Most likely the cancer or cardiac unit of the hospital. So the largest animals on the planet are vegan. And of course, we've come into this little water issue shortage that we're having. And I often joke, I hope you like the recipes in my cookbooks, because we're all going to be forced to go vegan, whether we want to or not. And many different studies now are weighing in on this. This one going back to 2012. There just isn't enough water on the planet to feed a population and with the current croplands. And of course, the fiber issue. As I mentioned, I almost died of a colon blockage because I was one of those red people sitting on the toilet, and we've already talked about that in some of our other speakers, but the 3 vegans are down at the bottom jumping for joy. And the work that I read when I first started this journey, I mentioned I read 5 books on fiber. One of them was by Dennis Burkett, who studied African tribes where they defecated 3 times a day. 3 times a day. That is the normal if you are eating a fully whole foods, plant-based diet that isn't processed. And of course, vegans don't need these things. I was a subscriber to a couple of those that you see up there. It's just amazing what we don't need. And the money you save by going vegan is not only the money in the food, but it's also by avoiding doctors and diseases, because you just don't need them at the rate that the animal eating population does. So these are some great vegan sources. I am using these great memes from veganstreet.com. They just have some amazing stuff up there. Versus $1 million for cardiac rehab, 30 days in cardiac rehab. That's what it costs, whether you, me, the government, or corporations pay for it. It is not sustainable. And of course, all the medications that you have to deal with. Kitchen Divided was my second book because my ex-husband was not vegan. And so I wanted to develop a book that would deal with mixed marriages. And I would start asking my audiences, how many of you live in mixed marriages where one of you is vegan and the other is not? So the recipes here are designed to help you not be a short order chef. They can plop whatever meat dairy. They wanted to, whatever it is you're making for yourself as your main course. And I also tried to mimic some of his favorite recipes from, or veganize the recipes from Red Lobster and places like that where he would eat. You know, he woke up from surgery and said, help me go vegan. I never want to have this pain again. And it only lasted 2 months. And, you know, it was just very sad that at that point, we could not move on as a couple. Vegan Fitness for Mortals, I got asked to write because, again, just being 70 and doing all the things that I do athletically, people were saying, how do you do that? So in this book, you can see at the top, whether it's yoga, weight training, swimming, biking, running, or walking, starting a program that is gradual. I was the assistant coach at Manatee High School in girls cross country and track, and I really tried to help the kids. You know, I would go run with them, and I would see them get so excited about running, but then because concrete is a fairly fairly new 100-year-old invention, you know, it's not designed for the human skeleton, so they would end up with stress fractures. And I really want this for my personal training clients, not to go out. I want you to love whatever it is you do, but finish without injury, and that is the big mantra of that book, because I want to be doing this at 100. So yes, that is my 5th book there, Vegan Sex, and that is Michael Greger, for those of you who recognize him. He wrote one of the endorsements of the book. And I wrote this because I had a personal experience. All my partners up until the age of 62 were not vegan, and doctors would prescribe the pill, and for the guys, and say, oh, it's just part of the aging process. But then I had my first vegan partner at the age of 62 and realized, oh no, this is very, very different. So what's good for the heart is good for other parts. I co-authored the book with Dr. Joel Kahn, who is a vegan cardiologist out of Detroit. And basically, the arteries in the lower part of the body are much smaller than the ones by your heart. And so by the time you have that death-defying heart attack 30 years after you've been diagnosed with ED, it's often too late. And so this is really the reason why we put this book together, just to bring this awareness that there is much you can do once you've been diagnosed with ED to stop the train. Then, of course, I joke, if Vegan Sex doesn't work out, Vegan for One, hopefully, will help you out with single-serving recipes. All right, let's get into the cost of food and just make sure we're on track here. So I started really, as a former TV investigative consumer reporter, I was already following the Consumer Price Index, and I knew that the price of beans and grains was insanely cheap. And I thought if I could crunch the numbers on every single recipe, as I did with Eat Vegan on $4 a day, then people would be very interested in eating vegan, whether or not they were. And sure enough, at the Miami Book Fair one year, when I was one of their speakers, somebody came up to me at my table and said, well, I don't know about vegan, but you had me at $4 a day. And so people are always asking me, now that the book is 10 years or more older, is this still true? And because I'm used to taking pictures with my smartphone, I started documenting it. And I'm gonna roll through these. Basically, the price of the largest bag at Walmart of pinto beans is 4.7 cents. This has been pretty much constant throughout the last 11 years. And I go back there compulsively all the time just to make sure. And so what this means is people say, oh, you got to cook the beans from scratch? I don't have time for that. And I go, you don't have time for heart disease, diabetes, or cancer. Those are real time wasters. I grew up in my childhood spending almost every day at a hospital with a relative, or watching my grandmother and mother eventually go through Alzheimer's. And that is just, it's a huge time suck. And so I just really encourage people to learn how to cook from scratch, especially beans, which can be your main source of protein. So we're going to go through these dates here. 4.7 cents an ounce, and we're just going to scroll through these. Okay, so just fairly recent prices. Rice, 3.8 cents an ounce. And again, different kinds of rice, just not varying a whole lot. We're talking about roughly a nickel an ounce. And so what does that work out to be? Let's do the math, because I love to do math. So if it's a nickel an ounce for beans, 2 ounces of dried beans cooks up into 4 ounces of beans. That's considered a serving. So we've got a dime for a serving of beans. maybe 20 cents for a serving of rice and kale. Chicken breast, look at these numbers climb these are all 4-ounce servings. So this is comparing apples to apples in terms of cost by 4-ounce servings. So Dungeness crab for 4 ounces, like who has that kind of money? I mean, it's just, I don't know, 76 cents for Spam. Even Spam doesn't get a break. And of course, we are seeing food shortages. So again, the beans go a long way. And when you look at some of these prices, it really is just kind of mind-boggling. How do meat eaters have enough money to pay for all this? 62 cents an ounce for a flat iron Angus. It sounds like something you ought to put in your hair, or not. T-bone steak, 72 cents an ounce. And see, this is where I get really excited, because I think the cost of food is really what is going to bring people to the vegan table in a very big way going forward. We're just not getting a break on any of these meat prices. And tilapia, you know, that's considered a very bargain kind of fish, but still 41 cents an ounce. And just, you know, if you're going to eat the whole thing, it's hugely expensive. This is shrimp, and easy to cook, but, you know, not so much for the arteries. And seafood, $1.62 an ounce. That's just crazy. And here we have king crab, almost $30 for that whole package, $1.85 an ounce, compared to a dime for beans. Cod, another bargain fish in the past, not so much. So luncheon meat, again, Spam not getting much of a break here. 30 cents an ounce for less sodium. It's like you pay more to get less sometimes. Yeah, nasty stuff. Okay, so what's really cheap? Here are the cheapest foods on the planet in terms of a vegan diet. The sweet potatoes down at the bottom, the different gourds, just regular potatoes, and even canned foods, still much more of a bargain than buying meat. And here we've got spaghetti squash. That can be a good replacement for pasta if you want to do that. And then the acorn squash, that's always my go-to for holidays. I stuff it with everything, vegetable, nuts, and seeds. And carrots. Okay, lots of different carrots. Again, if you process them yourself, they're going to be cheaper. Kale, a dime an ounce. And this was a recipe I made for a cooking demo. And again, just very cheap. And I show the ingredients here. And you know, these come from Walmart, and people go like, well, are you recommending Walmart? Because, you know, maybe they're not so socially responsible and whatever reasons that people have to hate Walmart. But I'm going like, if you are living below the poverty level for a family of 4, which is about $23,000 a year, you're already shopping at Walmart. So again, all the recipes in Eat Vegan on $4 a day, crunch the numbers based on ingredients that I found at our local Walmart 11 years ago. And here I begin, because I'm into proving things. That recipe you just saw worked out to 47 cents an ounce for a serving. Again, just trying to prove that you can do this on $4 a day. Of course, you can grow your own. Our soil can sometimes be a little challenging here. So you can consult with the extension service, and they will actually, if you bring in a soil sample, they'll analyze it for you and tell you what you need to do. So there's so many reasons to go vegan. All of these qualify now. And there are all kinds of reasons not to be drinking milk from another species. And there are also lots of great memes that show that so much of our agricultural use of land could be better spent growing plants that vegans would actually use versus growing corn or soy that the cows are using. And there are all these animal rights reasons not to eat dairy. We are the only species that drinks milk from another species. I was a La Leche League volunteer leader for many years before the field of lactation consultants were invented, and I would get those middle of the night calls, my baby won't nurse. And we knew that human milk is really the best milk for our species. It makes our brains grow very quickly, versus cow's milk makes a cow grow ginormous in a very short period of time. It also makes cancer cells grow very quickly. And a lot of people, once they see some of these videos, like or movies like Cowspiracy, then it is an epiphany, and you realize that, well, if I'm not willing to do these things, why would I pay somebody else to do these things? And of course, this idea, even when I was in the Leche League, once a baby was weaned, they had cookbooks that were full of meat and dairy recipes. And it never crossed my mind at the time, well, like, if we're drinking our own species milk for the period of birth to 2, 3, 4 years, whenever it is you, in theory, would wean, why would you start drinking the milk of another species? And so lots of us are now kind of making these connections, and it's so important as we realize that there are many alternative forms of milk now. When I started out, it was pretty much soy, and it was disgusting. So we have many delicious flavors of milk, and we can use that word. There was a time where we thought maybe we'd have to stop using the word milk because there were lawsuits from the dairy industry about that. Just some ideas to let you ponder this whole idea, if you haven't, about why are we drinking cow's milk? And many people really are feeling that cow's milk is going to be a thing of the past. So just some ideas here about, the United Nations has said the single most important thing we can do to reduce our carbon footprint is to wean ourselves off of animal agriculture. And then the water conservation, very important. It's kind of like, as I do this presentation, it's kind of like the elephant in the middle of this field is red tide. We were going to have some friends over tonight to go to Siesta Beach, but because the red tide is so strong there, we canceled those plans. Why do we have red tide? Well, if you Google it, yes, it's been historically documented in other countries around the world, but it is hugely increasing. The fertilizer runoff, most of which is used to grow food for cows so we can eat them, is coming from the Mississippi River down into the Gulf of Mexico dump, and all the other tributaries that are picking up pesticide and herbicide runoff, and fertilizers that contribute to algae growth. So the keto diet is the latest rendition of Atkins, which is like the Zone diet, South Beach diet, all these high protein diets. They do make you lose weight sometimes in the short term, but often at the expense of our hearts and our kidneys. I did Atkins, as I mentioned earlier in my life, when it was the thing to do, and I forced myself to read the paleo books, the meat-based paleo books, and that's why I wrote Paleo Vegan, because I wanted an alternative. And sure enough, National Geographic agreed in a cover story a year later, saying that it was called The Real Paleo Diet, and they said, yeah, it wasn't like a wild boar ever did run through our backyard 3 times a day, and we could catch it successfully without getting sick and dying, and not good for the planet. So all these things are great for your gut if you have those issues. Dr. Barnard has a whole book on foods for your brain and lots of vegan proteins. Miyoko Skinner is such a hero for doing her whole thing. She's also with my publisher. 2 minutes. Okay. So hope you all, if you want to find out more, come to my website, vegcoach.com. I'm over here with all of the wonderful resources that I can bring to you, and just going through these real fast. Usually this is an hour talk, so we just give you the fast track here. Yes. Okay. So my kids, yes, they grow up, and it's all about being around for the next generation and passing this on to our kids, whether we have them or not, but leaving the planet in better shape. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time and attention. Gotta run.
Did anybody have a question for Ellen? We have about 2 minutes if anybody has a question. She gave you so much great information, there's nothing left to cover. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Round of applause for Ellen Jaffe Jones. Thanks for being here at the Sarasota Veg Fest today. It's a beautiful day out, a warm one, but beautiful.